Hi, you're listening to the NewSpace India podcast, a bi-weekly talk show that exclusively brings insights from the Indian space activities ecosystem. I'm your host Narayan, the co-founder of India's first space-focused think tank, Spaceport Sarabhai. Guests on the NewSpace India podcast help you understand space activities-related macro and micro trends within India in all aspects, including space history, local industry, space science, technology evolution, law and policy, art, and more. The NewSpace India podcast is supported by Dassault Systems, a global leader in providing businesses and people with collaborative virtual environments to enable sustainable innovations. Dassault Systems Solutions supports startups, small and medium-scale enterprises, and original equipment manufacturers in developing disruptive solutions for space launchers and satellites. Hi, and welcome to yet another episode of the NewSpace India podcast. And today we have here Farhan, who's the inventor of India's first satellite, which was privately built and launched on a SpaceX rocket. Farhan, welcome to the show.
Hi, NP. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here on the podcast. Been following it for a long time, probably from the podcast number 1. So, great to be here and be connecting with everybody else on the podcast. Hi, good day to you guys, whatever time it is in your zones.
Thank you. So before we dive into the topic of satellites and space and everything else, I know that you've done a lot of different things in life at the end. Unlike most of us, where we're focused only on space bits at the end. So would love to hear from you your own early days, because I know that you're probably one of the only people I know in India who kind of can go down to the basics of electronics, components, connect that back to software, connect that back to systems level stuff, do product design from a baseline component level to then realizing the whole products at the end. So would love to hear from you, what got you actually into getting into that frame of mind, because, it's not something that is very easy to get into at the end.
So I was actually lucky to have a bunch of people around me all the time, and probably by design or by fate and luck, who were interested in making things and in doing things and stuff like that. So my family actually has very little of science in them, right? So most of them are professors of history or literature and stuff like that, but many of them also worked on in All India Radio. So I used to tag along, and that actually was I was really fascinated by the fact that voice travels through nothing and gets to the other side. And I struggled for a long time from my 5th standard onwards to make a radio transmitter. And it didn't work, of course. Okay, I had no idea of how to go about doing that. But then one day, this is one of those weird things that our school had a very funny policy that every teacher was also encouraged to pursue their interest. So, for example, our geography teacher was a radio ham. Our class teacher was a good bowler, and he actually coached our team. Our Hindi teacher actually did theater with us. So, stuff like that. So, this vice principal one day walked in with a complete ham radio set and set it up in our physics lab. And I was completely blown that, here I was struggling to get a toy transmitter going from one room to another. And these people were, very casually speaking to somebody in Bombay, Gujarat, Bangalore. And then, they even got somebody from Germany, they said. I didn't believe it because it's on Morse code. So, I don't know whether they're fibbing or not. But that actually, so I just latched onto that group of people. And I stuck with them, and I'm, even till date, I am, in touch with that crowd. So, among the things that they were doing, there were these rumors of some of them who were able to go through amateur radio satellites. And I didn't know much about that at all. And what happened was that there was this local club here, the Andhra Pradesh Amateur Radio Society, and they had a shelf of books. And I just keep rummaging through it to see if I can, get hold of something or the other, because there's no internet. There's no tribal knowledge too. Most of these people were basically using battered old World War II radios and somehow got them going. So, very good and committed people, but they didn't have much of electronics knowledge. And one thing which I managed to extract out of that entire pile was an AMSAT bulletin, okay, which had a description of Oscar 7 and Oscar 8. And it basically said that, these are the frequencies on which it, comes up. So one of the Oscars, which is Oscar 7, also had a beacon in HF, in high frequency, okay, at 29 megahertz. And I happened to have a radio which could actually, get onto that frequency. So I tuned onto that frequency, although my antenna was not meant for that frequency. And whenever I was home, the volume was cranked up and the frequency was tuned, and I just sit hoping to, catch it. And in about 3-4 days time, I actually managed to, catch the beacon. So there's no prediction. I didn't have prediction software. But I realized that it's a polar orbit and the next orbit will come around the same time the next day. But it didn't come at the same time. It came about, 70 minutes later. And then I realized that it keeps shifting also every day. So it was a very, intuitive sort of a feel I got that, the passes keep shifting by 70 minutes every day, and a new pass appears on the other side, which also keeps, then again shifts back in the time scale. So you knew that between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., you would have these passes. And if the pass happened at 8 o'clock today, it will happen at, 9, 10 the next day, and so on and so forth. And then the other important thing was that the passes would be longer if they were at 9 a.m. because otherwise they were glancing passes. But I had no idea of this. So, but it was really exciting to get a signal from space, right? So then, I had to uplink. There's no way to uplink, I'm just a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid and stuff like that. So we scrounged around and all that. And there were other hams who were able to get through. So what they did is that they took these VHF walkie-talkies and sort of hacked it out to generate just a constant wave instead of frequency modulating it. Then managed to, somehow pull the frequency out, because in those days the walkie-talkies didn't have PLL. They were all crystal controlled. Managed to ground a crystal down to this frequency and, get it up. So it was a very hands-on way of getting on to satellites and being able to, hear your own echoes. But what happened was also, and this is the amazing part, that apart from getting the beacon was actually Morse code, and in Morse code, they gave out the telemetry, right? And eventually, I found out the format of the telemetry through someone, and we would start, copying this down and note down the telemetry and then translate it back because it would basically give numbers out, right? So you knew that channel 1 was battery voltage, channel 2 was, solar panel 1, 2, 3, 6, etc. So when I was about 16 years old or 17 years old, not just me, but, a lot of my friends, Amar and others, we knew how satellites, live, so to say. That, as the satellite tumbles, there are voltages which keep going up and down. The battery keeps going up and down. The morning passes because it's just coming out of the eclipse. The battery is going to be low, okay, etc., etc. So, this is really, really fun things that we figured out about these satellites, and these satellites would die, right? And when they would die, they would basically, keep coming down with battery, and then one day they would go away. So you have to hang in there with, better antennas, better positioning, etc. And this is all being done manually, okay? So there are no computers. There were no computers. It's not that we didn't have computers. There were no computers. So that actually gave a whole lot of us, and, these people still are around, a very intuitive, hands-on, tribal sort of knowledge of the low Earth orbit satellites. What keeps them up? How do they manage, right? So, they would have these bulletin boards coming up, saying that the satellite is going into eclipse for the next 2 weeks, don't operate, etc. So, what is this eclipse business? There's no solar eclipse happening. So, you sort of figure out all this stuff. So, that actually was a big grounding that I had for subsequent work with satellites. And then at that point in time, I mean, you'd always imagine what would it take for us to make our own satellite. And that was not something that, I ever imagined that we would, a bunch of us sitting here in Hyderabad and Bombay would be able to pull off. But there was an opportunity of, some alignment of stars that, got that opportunity and we managed to pull that through.
Yeah, always fascinating to hear all of this, right? Because today I see that, I don't know if you consider ham to be kind of a dead hobby today among youngsters, or it's a generational thing, because I guess, people, the whole hobby probably got ruined by smartphones at the end.
Well, it's actually good that that happened because what happened is a lot of people came into this hobby as a way of, talking to people for cheap, avoiding the STD charges. Those people have gone away. But the hobby is pretty well and alive. Last month from Hyderabad, 100 people applied for licenses. Just last month, okay? And this is every 2 months, there are new batches coming up. So the thing is this, that the interest in tech stuff, and I'm not talking just about ham radio, is mostly coming from C and B towns. The city folks have no need to, investigate these things. I mean, the curiosity sort of died. I don't know why, but that's a separate discussion to have at some point in time. But I see that there's a lot of stuff that these kids come up with, want to do, okay, and they see a radio, they say, okay, I need to build this. How can I, buy this or build this? Or, you tell them about satellite stuff. I mean, for example, the ExseedSat itself, many of the people of the team came from, towns in Orissa, Behrampur and here and there, etc. So actually there is a fair amount of very interesting folks who are coming not just into ham radio as hobby, but even electronics, right? And basic electronics and embedded stuff, etc.
So when we talked about being a ham and growing up and everything, but I do know that, you did other things in life, of course, before trying to build ExseedSat. Would love to hear a bit about, your own professional journey and building companies and everything else.
Yeah. So basically what happened was, as I said that, I am a great believer in Guru Shishya Parampara. Okay. And I happen to have had some really fabulous mentors, and I always look for mentors and, go and become their disciple, so to say, much to their embarrassment. So earlier on, when I was in engineering second or third year, I ran into this really amazing guy called Arun Kumar. His call sign was VU2 Oscar Zulu, and he was actually part of the original Aryabhatta team. And he was a radio ham, and he basically instilled the stuff saying that, my friend Raju, who's my colleague right now sitting here, he was also a good friend of Arun. And Arun would say that, you just take on really ambitious projects and somehow throw himself at that and get it through. So this entire hesitation of, fear of failure was something that Arun asked us to, throw away. So he, in 81 or 82, decided that we are going to build a telescope to see Halley's Comet. And we are going to build a 6-incher. And he would every day, sit and keep grinding this glass 6 inches wide, got it going. He used to run a computer company here in those days, just 8-bit computers, CPM computers. So he took stepper motors out from floppy drives and made a full Azel tracking system out of it. And the entire code was written on a 6800, not 1000, 6800 microprocessor in about 128 bytes, because that's the only memory which is available there. So he was really, a huge influence on me. And I worked at his place, and my engineering project under him was to bring up a complete 8-bit computer with an operating system called CPM. So that was the first thing that I did. And out of there, I was basically a hardware guy. Okay, I didn't know much about software, and I thought software is for sissies, right? I mean, this is people who just sit down on computer and write boring stuff. Real men work with soldering irons or some. It's a fancy notion that way. But what happened was that, as I said, that my family's been into literature. So one of the things that we came across was the fact that Urdu language did not have a typeface. And that is because Urdu was cursively written. And it was cursively written with a lot of patronage coming in from kings and nawabs, etc. So it was a very, very evolved cursive thing, which was almost like, it's calligraphed, right? So out of college, I was working with Arun in integrated data systems, but I thought that this was something that we could crack. And I met a calligrapher who had sort of, half figured out how to do it. So we tried implementing it on computers. And in those days, for example, there was no font designing software. So you had to design the font on AutoCAD. So you write all these tools to translate that into, rasterize them, etc. Because there were no vector fonts in those days. There was no laser printer. So managed to convince someone to import a laser printer, and then, learn to write, directly to the binary to the laser printer using HP laser printer driver you had to write, etc. So that was actually a fun project, and that actually taught me to program. Okay. And this was very tight space. You were programming to an 8088 with 640K RAM, and you had to stuff a complete graphical user interface, a text editor with Urdu fonts, English fonts. This is going right to left, that's going left to right. And I had no idea. When I wrote the software, I had no idea of what a linked list is, of what a tree is. And I joined MTech in Central University here. And the first class was on data structures. And that blew my mind. I said, oh God, there is something more than just arrays that you can use as a data structure. So, I grabbed that book, okay, Sahani, I remember. And I said, okay, this is the book for me, right? And this is going to be my future. So, I became pretty good at C. I think, for me, C is as good as English. I can just sort of, visualize stuff in C before I even sit down to write stuff. So, I got the Urdu software going, and that actually then from Urdu it jumped into Vedic Sanskrit, because Vedic Sanskrit was very difficult, right? It just doesn't go, left to right. It goes, top down as well because of the, the conjugations which happen there. So did that. Then that business got sold off to CDAC. CDAC acquired it. A lot of that code is in their DTP software. I don't know whether they still sell it, called iLeap. So they integrated into that. Then I was part of the ISKI standardization committee, the Indian Standard Code for Information Interchange, which was for Indian languages. So I actually took part of the Perso-Arabic scripts in it, which were a lot of Indian. It's not just Urdu. Sindhi is written in that script. The old Punjabi is written in that script. Saraiki is written in that script. So we did that. 98, I sold that off. And then I took a hiatus for a couple of years. And then in 1999, a friend of mine, who is also my chartered accountant, he had got a computer with, a sound blaster on it. Okay, so you could actually record sound. So, and being a radio ham, I said, okay, so, you've got these computers networked here. Probably I can record the sound on this computer and, take it off to the next computer. So that actually spun off from being a lab curiosity of an intercom to being a complete voice over IP service, which ultimately spanned about 70 countries. We had clients in 70 countries. It was Asia's largest voice over IP network, and this was before they standardized on the protocols. There was no protocol. There was H323, but that was actually a video conferencing protocol that some people hacked to get going with voice over IP. I was part of the ITF work group, which was doing the SIP protocol. In fact, ours was the first SIP protocol, the reference implementation of SIP, which is the standard protocol for IP telephony. We did that. It's still there on the homepage of SIP. So that happened in about year 2000, 2002, 2003. That business continued for a long time, but there wasn't much that I was doing there because I had written the code and had moved on. And that got acquired in 2008. Then again, I took a couple of years off. We're sitting here in Lamakan, so we started this cultural center because I was really interested in culture, so we did that. And then I was having a fairly happy and peaceful existence until Mahesh called up one day and said, why don't we do something with technology, and we'd like to, I'm starting a venture fund, would you like to be a partner there? And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. I didn't know that, we'd ultimately be running our own company. And at that time, we were looking at a lot of companies, including yours, right? Dhruva, we had a lot of discussions with Dhruva as well, and a lot of other guys. And that was pretty exciting to me. And I kept telling Mahesh that, yeah, it's not so difficult to actually build and launch a satellite. And I think we have to do that to see how this industry works and whether it's really, achievable at all or not. So he said, okay, in that case, let's, float a company and, do this properly. So that's how, the ExseedSat actually came into, the project got started.
Right. I remember actually, I think it goes back now 7-8 years or more from all of this. And, one of the reasons why we started Dhruva Space, me and Sanjay, is we saw a gap in the market actually, saying ISRO is building all of these big satellites. And there's a shift towards smaller satellites, and there could be niche applications that can complement these bigger satellites. Right? And it's taken a while for some of this ecosystem to come through and form and so on. It's still forming as we speak, I guess. But I guess we were at the very, very early stages. And
yeah. A lot of businesses get killed because they're too early on the curve. There's nothing to do there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought and something that I think about almost every day, saying, are we still early or not in India? So what do you think?
No, I think in the last 3 years, India is too late now, really. Okay. I think that, because I've been scanning the market, looking at investment opportunities, etc. Right. So, for example, if you look at the launch costs, they have really plummeted. Okay. Some really good friends are still, looking at launch vehicles and investing in them, or building launch vehicles. But really, if you look at what SpaceX is going to offer in terms of launch capabilities, except for you wanting some really weird orbits, okay. But for that, if it's a standard orbit, it'll be very difficult to beat people like SpaceX, and SpaceX are not the only guys who are going to be doing this, right? Everybody from Electron onwards will be doing this. So I think that market is sort of gone. Second thing is, when we are coming to building spacecrafts themselves, that is space missions, right? Whether they're satellites or otherwise. I think, I hope it's not too late, but I think that, we just wandered around trying to get a policy in place. And that's really affected us badly. There's no way you can get frequency clearance. There's no way you can get flight clearance. You don't know which authority to explore at all. So what will happen ultimately is that a lot of subcontracting will come to India. But I don't think that the value will be built here. For example, if you think something like Starlinks could be done here, impossible. Because, you just don't have those sort of clearances. All that could be done here very easily. A lot of these constellations could have been done from India. But, we've just sort of missed the bus.
Yeah, I think there are pockets. Of course, we can talk about this later in the episode. But then would love to hear from you on your journey of conceptualizing ExseedSat 1 and then, looking at the architecture of the satellite itself and why you chose to do whatever you chose to do at the end. And then how did you realize it, the journey of the realization of the satellite itself? And then, going towards launch and operation.
Yeah. So, okay. It's interesting. So, this will get a little technical. So, I hope our listeners bear with us on this. So, the whole thing is that, I have always believed that you should figure out the maths, right? You should figure out the maths. So, you start a mission typically by doing a link budget. And from the link budget, you figure out how much power it's going to consume. And from that on, you basically develop everything else. One thing was very clear to me, that our first mission is going to be a transponder. Okay, there's nothing else that we could do. Because, you see, you have to do this in steps, right? So if you say that, the first mission itself, I'm going to do a low Earth orbit satellite, which will have a 3-degree stabilized platform and give you, 60 centimeter resolution infrared imaging, it's not going to work, right? So you have to basically do this. And you have to keep flying. That's the most important thing, for any startup. Unless you're flying, okay, you're not in space business. You're in business of simulations. So what is it that we can quickly make and which will actually give us experience, which will, put us firmly in some sort of place where, you know what you've done. So you had to pick up a mission which did not require DCS. You had to pick up a mission which could be done on low power. Most importantly, which could be done on 1U, because that's all you could afford, because you didn't know where you were going wrong either, right? So given all this, we thought that we should do an analog FM transponder. And that also is partly because I have expertise there. I mean, I've built radios all my life, right? So I could build radios very easily. So you say, okay, this is what we are going to do. And then, you build these radios separately, you try them out. So the payload is worked out because, radios are something that you can do, except that I struggled a lot to have the receiver and transmitter on at the same time. I really struggled a lot because the transmitter kept overloading the receiver, although they were at different frequencies. You had to use something called a duplexer. So finally we did manage to, get that piece in place. But what happened, and this was one thing which, I was very glad, is that I kept reaching out to people and asking them, right? I mean, from Krishna Swamy of ISRO to you guys, right? I mean, you and Sanjay Nikanti and, Jerry Buxton, who's the VP Technology at AMSAT, USA. Now, US has this policy of, anything which is specific to a space mission, they'll not tell you. They can't, right? They'll go to jail if they do that. But they can discuss general stuff and publish stuff. So they would point out to, various things here and there, etc., etc. So we put this entire thing together. And for me, the important pieces of which I had no idea was the OBC and the EPS. And we went wrong with the EPS, and I'll come back to that story in a bit. So for the OBC, it had to keep running all the time, right? And thankfully, I had some experience in that because in my internet telephony, I had to write switches which could work for months and years without requiring a reset. And I had learned how to do that. So it was almost like an embedded program. I mean, it used to run on Linux, but I remember that from 2003 to 2006, we did not reboot the system and the switch ran for 6 years. I remember this because it sort of went round its clock, right? Of that PID comes, right? When you say, what a PS, and you get the process status out, it basically, clock rolled over. So I was thinking what's happening. Then I realized, it's been years since it's been running without reboot. So, but, again, how and, what processor do you pick? So, if you actually took a theoretical thing, you would say you'd go to, MPS 430, Texas Instrument or something which can run on a milliwatt, it can run on a lime with 2 coins stuck in it or whatever. But the fact was that, in order to write it properly, I needed to know the tools that we knew ourselves. So I chose Arduino, which would consume, 10 milliamps of current instead of, 2 milliamps. But I thought that, it's better to have a tool chain which is reliable with everything else sorted out, and especially where I can get people to work on it, right? So, Arduino is something that every kid knows how to program. My son programs on Arduino. So, we chose stuff which is safe to take on as a technology. And what happened was, when we were doing all this stuff, and I over-engineered the radios. They were actually using huge shields because I said there was a desensing problem. So we ran out of being able to use NiCad batteries. So the thing is this, and I never knew about all this stuff, right? Batteries, who would care? Batteries are the most boring things, but they are actually so critical. The EPS is so critical to making a satellite that I had no idea. So you had to have these number of, charge-recharge cycles, right? So it would be best if I use simple NiCad batteries, because NiCad has 10,000, charge-recharge cycles. LiPo has typically 1,000. But NiCads, weigh a ton. They're really, really, heavy batteries. And they also charge very easily. You actually don't require much of a charger. A resistor, connected to the solar panels with a diode in series is all you require, and it'll charge. Very forgiving in the way it charges. It doesn't have to be heated to restart. So it was very good. But when we finally put this entire thing to weigh, we found out that we were, far beyond our power budget, weight budget. And it was $70,000 per kg at that time, right, from space flight. And that was something that we just could not afford to. And you can't say, okay, give me 200 grams more. I mean, you have to buy a second U, which is another kg. And that's a lot of money, right? It's about 1 crore. So there's no way we could afford it. So about 4 weeks before we were to ship this, we decided to switch to EPS, which was based on LiPo, and we couldn't develop this in that much time, so we bought it from EnduroSat. And sad to say, EnduroSat actually shipped a faulty unit to us. It was not charging properly at all. We went through a couple of charge cycles. The battery was not coming up to full speed, which is why actually the ExseedSat did not last a long time, right? Or probably 2 months. So, but we had paid for our slot, launch slot. So we decided to fly. We should not have, in retrospect. So when Avais had this stuff, right, and he said, "I'm pulling back from launching a satellite Pixel," right? So I reached out to him and I said, "Good job." I didn't have the courage to say that, it's off. So, but these are things that you learn, right? I mean, this stuff you learn, and ultimately we had put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, get that going. But nevertheless, as a first space mission, right, which was built in my cellar, we didn't even have a proper office then. And everybody was learning, right? There was George, fabulous machinist. For the first time in his life, he was building this, and he was 70 plus. And later on, we figured that he was actually suffering from cancer, and he expired subsequently. But he signed up. Okay, he taught me a lot of metalwork. Gurudev Panda just walked in saying that, I need to be on the project. So he was there, Sanjay was handling all the paperwork between space flight and us. And then Sujata just, stepped in. She was not part of our team at all, but she was the one who got us space flight actually, agreement in place. And she had a lot of critical project management. So she used to actually run the XP service pack project. So she knew, what it takes to get the stuff going. And Mahesh kept fixing this stuff, etc. But the point was that we were always pulling, 20-hour days, literally for a long time. And we didn't even have proper test instruments in place. So we had to improvise. For example, to test desensing, you can't test desensing in a lab, right? So you have to simulate it. So what you do is you mount the satellite on a clear day. And this was a big problem because around that time, we had to deliver in October. It was monsoon every day like it is here today in Hyderabad. It was raining every day and we couldn't take our satellite out. So you take the satellite out, switch it on, deploy the antennas on a big long pole, and then you sit in a car with a ground station with huge attenuators put on both the antennas and see if the signal loops through. So you know how much the free space path is, for example, from here to the airport is, 20 kilometers as a crow flies. And then you do your calculations and say that it's working or not working, etc., etc. So you do that. It took us almost 2 months to, get those things in place. But it was really exciting times. And I was reaching out to various people from Arun to Jerry to, whoever I could, get my hands on or, who give me a time of the day to figure out this stuff. But ultimately, we did manage to do it. We kept things very simple. That's an important thing. We didn't optimize too much, which was, again, a very good thing that we did. So, it was actually a great experience, really great experience. And thankfully, nobody lost their cool, so to say, right? I mean, under pressure, that happens very often, and that actually spoils it even more. So that in effect is, how we manage to get it done that quickly.
Again, one of the interesting bits of all of this is there's also many firsts in all of this, because nobody ever attempted to build a satellite, even a CubeSat, for example, in India at that point of time, and flew it outside of India as well. Just in terms of the bureaucracy bit, I know that there's a lot of challenges even today in that. But so what was it like to, let's say, firstly operate on those frequencies, even if it is amateur band or whatever, but also to just take a satellite in a backpack, possibly fly to the US, integrate that.
Yeah, I took it in a penguin case. Let me clarify. I didn't take it in a backpack. So, well, the thing is this, that thankfully the ham radio frequencies are pre-allocated, right? So they are pre-allocated, and the coordination is done by International Amateur Radio Union. It's not done by WPC. So WPC actually was completely out of the picture. I mean, they already have allocated these frequencies for ham satellites, and the coordination is being done by somebody else. So that is one thing which we didn't have to fight for. Now, what happens is a lot of people use ham frequencies, but the key thing of using ham frequencies is that any transmission that you make there has to be publicly receivable by everybody. I mean, the format has to be well known to everybody, and it should be available for use by all radio hams, right? So, which this mission was, of course. So we didn't have a problem there. But the sort of problems that we would have much preferred to launch it through ISRO. I mean, our second satellite went through ISRO, but we would have much preferred the first one to be with ISRO, but ISRO's hands were tied because ISRO could only bill in dollars, right? I mean, they had never run into a situation where an Indian company walks up to them and says, launch my satellite. I mean, everything that ISRO launched, which belonged to India, belonged to Indian government. So there was no transaction, so to say. So that actually, and we actually spent a lot of time, probably about 7-8 months, trying to, get this out. And to be fair to everybody in ISRO, that they worked really hard trying to, get this thing out. But, that's the way government works. It's not because of a lack of empathy, but just the way the structure is that, and it remains the same even today. I mean, there's no further clarity, with all the meetings and, all kinds of stuff that we have managed to, put out as papers and policy documents, etc. We're still right there. If it comes to a space mission, you'll still have problems clearing. I don't know how, other missions are doing it, but...
And what about, let's say, taking the satellite out in a penguin case? Were there any questions on all of this, or people just said, oh, we don't really...
Well, there were no questions at the Indian end, right? But when I landed in Seattle, I had a very funny situation because, and in Dubai too. So what happens is, people who've actually seen a CubeSat or any satellite for that matter will know that there is a remove before flight pin, right? So you basically arm the satellite, so to say. And once the satellite is fixed inside the spacecraft, there's a pin that you pull out. And then what happens is the moment the satellite ejected out, it sort of starts working. So there's this remove before flight pin, and it actually had a big tag which said, remove before flight. So when I was, coming from changing the flight over from the Indian aircraft, the aircraft which came to Dubai, in Dubai you have to change to the US craft, right? So the customs opened this, and there was this satellite there which had a big thing which said, remove before flight. So this guy thought that this was remove before putting it onto the next aircraft, and he reached out to pull it, and I had to sort of jump and, grab it. And as I grabbed it, they thought something violent was going to happen. So everybody was, with their action stations. But thankfully, nobody fired at me. But I explained to them that this is, meant for somewhere else. And in Seattle, there was another very interesting experience I had. So they had given me these custom papers, right? As you're bringing the spacecraft in, you have to show it at the customs. So I went up to the immigration office and I said, I'm carrying this. He said, oh, we know all about this. So I said, how do you know about this? So he says, today you are the 5th person to have come in here because there are a lot of people bringing in their CubeSats to be integrated into the space flights, the deployers that day. So we had a lot of people, and I met Jerry there for the first time. And a lot of people, there was a Thailand group as well. So, we were all discussing our own, stories. Then we all integrated ourselves. Then we went out. So there was interesting episodes at the customs in Dubai and US rather than in India.
Yeah, always exciting in all of this. But, you did this all on your own accord at the end. And there's a lot of people, of course, who want to start these companies. And, now venture capital and other things have matured in India. But, I've been thinking about this for many years as to what can the government do or ISRO do or any of this at the end. I would love to hear from you, if you see any role for government in all of this in supporting, any of these efforts in one way or the other. Or, even giving market access in one way or the other to companies at the end. What would be like your thoughts on all of this?
I think one key problem that's space missions, I'm not talking about launch vehicles, but space missions face in India are primarily to do with two regulations. One is regulations with spectrum. And the second are regulations around making spacecrafts and aircrafts. Okay. For example, in the US, even if you're not the age to drive a car, you can get a license to fly an aircraft. Right? They're fairly straightforward, even if not simple, rules of how you can make your own rockets, for example. Right? So if you see all people who are working at SpaceX, on the technical side, they are all who as kids have, built their own model rockets. And some of these model rockets go a couple of kilometers into space, right? So they knew what motors were about, what's the difference between the solid propellant and a liquid propellant, right? And, what are the ways to control it? These people have had hands-on experience. And unless as kids you have made it, when you had time to explore it or during college, and then you come to work, otherwise you'll not have an intuitive feel to this. So if you want to get this ecosystem going 10 years from now, you have to deregulate it today. And unless you deregulate it, people will not be able to experiment, right? So, and people will experiment for the heck of it, not as a part of business. So what happens in India usually is that somebody works at ISRO, figures out how things work, then they'll leave ISRO, then come out and then, form their own company to do it. So they've used ISRO's time to, basically develop the technology. But on the other hand, if you just allow people to do stuff, that will itself, create a lot of people with interest in it. Right now, you can't make your own drone, leave alone a spacecraft. Even an indoor drone you can't make as per the current rules. So I think you have to deregulate. That I think is important. The moment you say you have to apply for a permission, then it becomes really difficult. The amount of, problems that you guys had to even fly a balloon, right, leave alone a spacecraft, was phenomenal. You're just trying to put up a weather balloon and you have to get a DGCA clearance and this clearance and that clearance, and that balloon is like a party balloon, right? You can leave a party balloon and nobody will ask you a question, but the moment you're putting a 10-gram payload onto it, then suddenly all these things, come up. So I think the key thing is to deregulate, to allow people to experiment, because unless they experiment, they will not develop the confidence of, building these big missions. And on the other hand, people who are interested in this space should start building, right? So you don't have to build big stuff, but for example, you build EPSs, you build OBCs, you build radios, you build all these stuff, right? Unless you have taken a solar panel and charged a battery with it, you will not know how the battery works, right? So hands-on experience is very important, because entire space industry is based on tribal knowledge, right? Very few books. And even if there are books, you don't understand those books, because you need people with experience to tell you how to do it.
And, one of the things that we talked earlier is if the timing of the whole industry is off, or, are we too late, or all of this. And I believe that there's still a massively big opportunity. The question is, people have not really thought through how big this industry can get. I've been talking about this for a few months now, and trying to see which applications in this country can be unlocked in a unique way that makes this industry very big. So for me, the problem is that we actually haven't explored any application that integrates into the markets directly that uses space infrastructure in one way or the other. So the problem that I see is when people in ISRO are building missions, they're building it to prove out a particular application, that the application itself can be done from space. So for example, let's take the whole potential fishing zone, or even fishing boat tracking using space and so on. What happens is that ISRO says, oh, we identified this mission because there's an anthropological need, there's a safety need, there's whatever need. And those people who are, whatever, anthropologists or sociologists or somebody like that says, okay, this is a requirement in the society. And then it gets raised to a mission level planning where somebody says, okay, we can build this mission that can solve this particular problem. Somebody goes and says, I'll build this because I'm interested in this hardware and I'm interested in this application. And what happens with all my research that I've done and all of this is that they build that out, they prove it out on the ground, but they never operate it at scale. So you do it in a way that you say that 200 fishing boats are now operating all of this, but 200 fishing boats are not the fishing community in India, right? So you'll need 100 satellites to service a country in India, right? So ISRO is in the business of proving applications are possible in space, but not operating it at scale.
Oh yeah. Actually, their name says it all. It's a space research organization. It's like a university, right? So you don't expect a university professor, even a professor of marketing, to be able to run a marketing department of a big company. I mean, they are only theoreticians. You require people with entrepreneurship to be able to take on these risky ventures and fail, right? I mean, 9 out of 10 of space startups are going to fail. Good for them. I mean, I don't see why they shouldn't fail, right? I mean, that's what venture capital is for, that, you basically take high risk bets, and if things work, they work. If they don't work, they don't work, right? And then you move on to another, because, I mean, as a VC fund, you're invested in 10 companies and you know that at least one of them is going to succeed and will cover up for the other 9. So I don't think that ISRO will be able to do that. And the fact is this, ISRO is basically into launch vehicles business, okay? Satellites is not their business, because earlier you had one satellite mounted on one launch vehicle, but now you can have 200 satellites mounted on that. So ISRO does not have the scale to do 200 missions for every launch. I mean, they were, before COVID, they were launching twice a month, right? But they can't be doing 400 missions per month. So somebody else has to step in. And the fact is that the cost of the mission has to come down to such a level that, you can basically look at it saying that, okay, it's like buying a car or something, right? I mean, car costs about 50 lakhs, a good car or whatever, or a small house, right? An apartment. And for that much amount, if you can actually put a mission out and see whether it works or not, I think that's where you'll see a lot of ideas being tried out and then thrown away, saying that, okay, this works, that doesn't work, etc., etc. So we just do not have the infrastructure in India to be able to do that. And that actually involves access to launches at a very low cost. By cost, I just don't mean financial cost, but even bureaucratic cost, right? So how easy is it if you have a small mission, let's say 3U mission, to be able to fill up a form, pay up money and say, okay, in the next 3 months, I'm going to put this mission up. And the timeline has also become very critical, because what happens is a lot of college kids take on a project, and if your launch date is 3 years away, you're not going to hang around until then. You'll move on. So that's actually a big problem, that a lot of kids want to build stuff, but they simply cannot wait long enough to get a launch slot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I look at the market situation today, I mean, reflecting back on all the last 15 years of trying to do all of this, I feel like there is one thing that we've totally missed that people are starting to unlock today, which is looking at which are markets that can use space-based intelligence that have never been addressed in India. The problem that I see, having now worked in Europe and other places, is that you need to understand culturally the problems of the place to solve it in a way that the technology fits that culture in solving that problem. So as an example, right? So we have 150 million acres of farmland in India. And you look at the penetration of credit in farmers, it's still not nowhere close to anywhere, where advanced countries are in formal institutional credit penetration, right? So you look at what has happened with respect to digitization of farmland in India. We're nowhere close to anywhere around the world as well, because farmland is broken down. It's now an average farm is like less than 2 acres of land or something like that. And then you look at regulation, for example, RBI regulation on lending, for example, right? 19% of lending has to go into agri sector in traditional banking, and that's a rule. And you look at the challenges that the banks face. They don't have actually a way of de-risking investment, unlike using a CIBIL score for somebody who is borrowing money or whatever, right, for farming at the end. So now the fascinating thing here is that if you just take the credit rating that you can provide for farming sector in India, the market size can be more than $1 billion big every year by building EO-based, Earth observation-based data products that can de-risk a lot of the investment, including climate models and many things like that, right? So unfortunately, we have not really had people who understand these local problems in the country come up in a way where you can plug these gaps and work directly in a B2B ecosystem to solve those problems that businesses face that are market tight. Right? So you go to 20 different banks and tell them, I will help you de-risk, like your investment in all of this, and I'll give you a way of telling you which are risky investments to make when it comes to lending. And it's the same for insurance. It's the same for, microfinance and many other things. So talking about markets that are completely, ripe for like disruption in all of these things. And you can talk about, it's not just Earth observation. You talk about communications as well. I mean, logistics at the end, how much of even IoT or other such logistics solutions can be explored for completely B2B solutions. It is not even a B2C solution, right? So these are unfortunately like things that I've not seen people like explore in India at this point of time. And unfortunately, I guess the problem is that we need two communities of people that I see to participate in our ecosystem. One is people who are not from the space industry, who understand markets directly and the problems there. Exactly. Right. Right. So that is one sort of a people. The second sort of people is the traditional software operators in the sector, like TCS or HCL or whatever, Infosys or others. Because today what I see is that these guys are running the infrastructure for every different industry around the world, right? Oil and gas, airports, whatever. And they understand how that space operates and what are the requirements of those companies and customers in software, right? And so we are in the space industry operating independently. And the moment we are able to link up with what Scient is doing or what Infosys is doing or whatever for an end customer who is an oil and gas customer or a BP or whatever, Shell or somebody else, and we are able to tell them that I'm able to give you some comms or some EO product that adds value to your customer. That's something that I see that we haven't even touched in this country.
Very true. I mean, not just our country, most of the countries I would say, right? But more particularly with India, and more particularly, I think, because of the situation in India of, certain types of infrastructure, etc., right? So what you're saying is very right, because given the sort of, intelligence which space can generate, whether it's infrastructure projects, as you're saying, agriculture is a huge one, that a lot of stuff can be done which is not being done. And ISRO is not really they are not the ones who will do it. So, for example, when you're talking about agriculture, it will be the agriculture university which has to figure out this stuff, right? That I can apply data this way and I need this data. So there will be, then, are the companies which step in. Because see, what happens now is, until now we have been extremely excited about the fact that, you can build a satellite. That is over, right? That's over 10 years ago. So building a satellite is not a big deal. Launching it is not a big deal. What is a big deal is, as you are, identifying it, is somebody who knows that I can put this sensor or that transponder or, whatever, right? This is the stuff that I can put in as a payload. So it's really, like moving from an embedded system to, saying, okay, I've got high-level languages available on the computer. Now I'm going to build applications for your business. So we have to graduate to there, right? I mean, we can't just keep getting excited by the fact that we have an 8-bit microprocessor which can, switch on LEDs and switch off LEDs. The Altair 8008 is gone. Now it's a time for an operating system of sorts, which is already in place, in terms of CubeSat, in terms of being able to buy stuff, etc., to be able to build stuff which actually delivers a lot of value. And one of the things that we figured out, is that if you go to, for example, Agriculture Department of Telangana state, right, and you say that, why don't we do this on sat with space? They imagine that it's a 500 crore project. So if you actually tell them, but actually for 2 crores we can have one space mission going, and you can prove this, then this person says, oh, that's within my own budget, and I can approve it. So you see that you have to go under that radar of where affordability is so easy, and even you've de-risked it. So one problem is that most of the Indians are extremely inefficient as entrepreneurs when it comes to their missions. So a stuff which would take about $100,000 for someone else to do, you will go and quote some 50 crores and the customer will walk away. So you have to be realistic in terms of being able to quickly deliver. That's the key thing, right? Being able to quickly deliver a space mission and do it cheaply. I mean, I was looking the other day of how much Elon Musk has invested into SpaceX. He has invested $30 million, right? $30 million is 200 crores. That's really cheap to get a launch vehicle off the ground, literally, right? So one of the things that we have to learn from startups abroad is how to do it cheaply. This is a big myth that Indians do stuff, inexpensively. No, we are one of the most expensive people when it comes to entrepreneurship. We pay ourselves big salaries. Our real estate is one of the most costliest in the world, right? I mean, in Hyderabad, it will cost you a bomb to actually, own a bungalow where you can put up an antenna, right? I mean, this is, so the cost of running startups in India is huge. And I think that you have to figure out, and then also figure out how to deliver these missions very inexpensively. So I think that if you do, then you'll find customers within India or outside India. But that, I think, is also something that the entrepreneurship has to look at. Very, some soul searching is needed there.
Again, an interesting subject on some subtle things that I've kind of realized over time, especially, is unfortunately nobody in India who's an end user of anything space pays for it. So what I mean for it is that, from what I know at least, or what I've at least demystified over the time, if the Ministry of Agriculture wants to monitor every crop in this country, for example, right? So unfortunately, the Ministry of Agriculture is not paying for that data. Yeah. It is asking ISRO for a requirement saying that, we as a Ministry of Agriculture want to have whatever food security in this country and so on. And we want to monitor all of this. And essentially what is happening, at least my understanding of what is happening, is that the end user, which is the Ministry of Agriculture, which is again a government body, will go to ISRO and say that you are the space guys and we want this service of being able to monitor all of this. And then the guys in ISRO have a special division, program planning division or whatever in that sense. And they will say that, okay, you have this thing where you want to monitor 150 million acres of land every year and whatever, dry and wet and whatever land at the end. And then they will translate that back into how many satellites this is, what is the resolution of the satellite, what band it is, and so on. And the way it is working is that ISRO says that this satellite costs so many crores in terms of the number of satellites and so many launches, and the launch vehicle costs 200 crores per vehicle, and satellites cost 500 crore per satellite. And they'll say for this monitoring service you will have to then put together 5 launch vehicles and 10 satellites, which is whatever 2,000 crores at the end, and that gets passed on to the finance ministry, saying your own Ministry of Agriculture is asking for this service, so if you pay me 2,000 crores, I will be able to launch 10 satellites on 5 rockets, and the end user there. So the problem that I see is that government markets are locked for entrepreneurs because end users are not paying at the end. And so you have a way where essentially you cannot go and sell this to end users in the country, right? Because this is the difference in US and India.
So I think, but for instance, India is one of the largest customers of Planet Labs, right? For the defense needs, surveillance needs, for all sorts of stuff, they are doing that. So what happens with the Indian government specifically is that if you have something which is working, then they'll just start buying. So the idea is not to wait for them to give you a contract, but to go out and build some system, right? And just start retailing it. See, the whole idea of a product is that you build something that people don't know that they want. Okay? When you're selling them something that they know they want, then you're already in a market, right? Where there's competition, where there is no innovation, where there are big players, and it's most probably a service, right? For example, people know that they want an accounting software. They know that they want an inventory control software, whatever, right? But if you are looking at something very innovative, you'll have to build it first. Planet Labs didn't have any customers to begin with, right? They launched some 6 or 7 satellites, 3U satellites, and then started, once the data started coming in, then the customers came in. Or you look at, what is that guy called? Hawkeye 360, is it? Yeah, Hawkeye 360. It's just 3 satellites, right? They are fairly small satellites. They are 12U satellites, just 3 of them, built pretty cheaply, okay? Bob Maguire, the founder of that, is a good close friend of mine. Radio Ham, with a lot of experience in AMSAT. I think he was VP technology there. So he actually learned a lot of stuff about building small missions there. And then he used exactly the same thing to replicate it. And he just offered a service where he could provide a map of radio transmitters, terrestrial radio transmitters, whether they're walkie-talkies or tanks or, whoever, right? Ships going around, etc., etc. And that has become really a key technology now. And a lot of people have, so I think the whole idea of a product is to bet on the fact that people will require this. Second thing is that now there are companies which are as big as nations who will want this, right? You look at a company like Roche, erstwhile Monsanto. These people have a huge stake in knowing how agriculture is doing, right? Or for example, for that matter, Geo now, right? Where do you buy what from, how is the crop coming up, etc. So they will require this stuff. And I think the whole idea is to build it primarily for the private market. And you have to build it first because these people are all legacy businesses. They will never appreciate what it can do until you show them what it can do, right? So there's this thing, I read about a Wall Street guy who said that he's walking down on Wall Street and he stopped, this is in late 70s, to see that on a shop window, there was this Apple II which was running VisiCalc, where it was just 60 rows, 60 columns by 24 rows. And he said that I used to spend weeks doing this stuff. And he walked in and said, I'll pay you any amount, I need that. So it's like that the aha moment for them will come when they see the data. They see, oh wow, this is what it can do. For example, keyhole, right? They built this entire, you know, what's now Google Earth. So until you saw it, you had no idea why you needed it. But once you saw it, then you said, yeah, this is what I need. I mean, every real estate developer needs it now.
Yeah, I mean, that is why I think that, mapping these things out and moving further, I think that's where we'll see a lot of entrepreneurs in India succeed in all of this. I mean, just to kind of, give you a sense of some of the new work that we are trying to do, we're starting a think tank. It'll be announced soon and the goal of the think tank is to basically match management research with space as a sector. And the goal of one of the elements of the think tank, that we will have scientific statistical evidence being built from primary research that will actually tell policymakers how big can this market be. So you bring in a management researcher who is focused on, let's say, agriculture, or let's say fishing, or infrastructure, or any other sector, because they're not biased about space. They are experts in that particular sector, and then they can talk about inefficiencies that are local to India. And then you could tell them what is possible to be done from space, and they could then say, okay, these are the inefficiencies that we can actually solve, and the size of this market in this particular segment is X, Y, and Z.
I mean, it can be done two ways. One is to, let's say, call people in who are working in agriculture and say that this is what space can do. And other is to listen to them, right? So you say, come and tell us, what are the challenges which you think might be solvable by, applying space tech.
Yeah, I mean, it's both ways, of course, in all of this. But the problem is that I think that, reason why we don't see as much support as, let's say the software industry gets with, government supporting a lot of that, is we don't really have any evidence that says how big this industry can get.
Yes, very true, right? See, this will become a sort of a support industry. I don't think that space in itself will be an industry, right? But it's like saying, manufacturing PCs. So manufacturing PCs is not the big industry. Software is the big industry, right? I mean, if you look at Intel's market cap, Intel powers every computer in the world, right? But Intel's market cap is a fraction of that of Microsoft. So I don't think that, launch vehicles and people who build space missions themselves are there. They should relegate themselves back and, put app developers, up front. And by app developers, I don't mean Android app developers, but who will develop space applications, understanding the domain. So they don't have to bother about how the spacecraft will work, whether, it can do 3-axis wipe text or not, etc. I mean, that all we'll take care of, right? You just go and build your mission, and then we'll ruggedize it, we'll launch it, we'll maintain it for you, we'll, put it on space, etc. So I think that's the important thing to know, that, you're comfortably well off. It can be done cheaply, it can be done reliably, and, we'll be able to do that if you can figure out what the heck is it that you want it to do, right? So that's the key thing.
And the most money, of course, you can make is when you're closest to the market and the end user. You will not make a lot of money, like profitably, when you are, the current status of the market is that as things get standardized in either, the launch market being organized or the spacecraft market being organized, all of that is already being done. So which means that the standardization and the competition there for just the hardware itself, makes the profitability and the volume to be, distributed among people. And you are not going to be, building 10,000 satellites. You're not going to be, going from building 10 to 10,000 satellites in a year. So unfortunately, I think, this is where we have not seen people do still a lot of things. And it's also the scale of problems, because, when you identify problems like, air pollution or, water or any other thing, right? So food and others, we have not really plugged a lot of the space-based solutions that can solve problems.
You don't even understand those domains, right? That's the tragedy, that the space scientists are so enamored with their own technology that they have not bothered to dip into what are the challenges and possibilities in other domains, right? For example, how many space engineers even understand communications well, fundamentals of communication, and what's possible, what's the latest happening, etc. Or for that matter, digital signal processing as applied to images. What are the possibilities of image processing? I mean, what is the sort of intelligence that you can get out of it? This is the stuff that actually the people working in space technology have to figure out, right? Then they will be able to build really, targeted solutions. Because if we just say, I know how to build an OBC, I don't know how to build an EPS, I know how to put a 3U together. Now you tell me, will you buy it? Of course they'll not buy it. Why would they buy it? But if you say that, I will tell you what is the water level in all the farms of India without sending people out there, then you're talking business, right? So you figure out how you're going to do it, whether you're going to do it through ground penetrating radars, you're going to do it through foliage, whatever it is, But that's actually the key thing, and this is what has to happen. Now you wrap up this entire business of being able to build space missions and get out in the field and learn the technology of other fields so that this can be applied there. Otherwise, all you're saying is, I'm a C programmer, okay? And I can build, I can write linked lists, and I can write trees, and I can do, bubble sort. So pay me money. They're not going to pay you money to do that, right? They're going to pay you money to solve their problems.
So I'm going to put you into a tough spot of being a fortune teller. So I would love to hear from you, from whatever we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of things that have, of course, happened. 8 years from now, 8 years before, nobody cared about this sector so much as what attention it gets today. And there's 50 new companies that have been formed in the last maybe 3 or 4 years. So we've solved a lot of problems in the sector, starting from venture capital being available, institutional financing happening with a lot of the companies, regulatory changes starting to take place on all of this. Would love to hear from you which sort of companies you see succeeding in India and which sort are not yet built and which sort will make it really big.
So I think there'll be two sorts of companies. One will be companies which are looking at enterprise space, right? Which will basically do what you're talking about. For example, agriculture being sold to, big, there are fairly large agriculture companies in India with fertilizer companies and etc. So there'll be a lot of enterprise space tech, but really the exciting thing will come from, I don't have any other word for it, the P2P space market. And the P2P space will basically do to internet what internet did to the legacy businesses. So what will happen, for example, is that it will bypass a lot of local regulation. This is the big problem which is going to happen now. For example, you couldn't earlier access any remote sensing data without taking NRSA's permission, but Google Earth completely, voided that entire business, and everybody had access to stuff, and you could see your own house and stuff like that because of Google Earth. But there are going to be even far more personalized startups in just Earth observation itself, right? And these will cater to smaller customers. For example, like Planet, right? You can ask Planet to give you a daily snapshot of whatever project is happening somewhere else, or how your own farm is doing, which is 500 kilometers away from where you are, for pennies. Same thing with financial transactions. Let's say a lot of people are talking about it, but for example, if there's a Bitcoin satellite somewhere which can do transactions, there are IoT. So all this will actually, I think, put up a whole generation of new devices which are connected, which do not depend on legacy, and by legacy I mean internet or even 4G and 5G to be connected across. So I'm very bullish on that coming through, which will sort of democratize data at a completely different level and in a completely different way.
Right. And maybe some last questions. We've already recorded for like more than, close to 90 minutes now. So thank you for the time. So we've seen a lot of young people build new companies, and not so experienced folks coming from different sectors stepping into the community to build these companies out. And that's something that's probably unique to India than any other part of the world. Recently, all of this. So, would love to hear from you. There's a lot of young people who contact me or contact others in this sector saying we are really passionate about this sector and want to get in, and they want to get their hands dirty in getting to do all of these things. That there's not much of a support system ecosystem existing for a lot of these people to really step into the sector in a way that can really affect a lot more inventors, a lot more creative people to being in this sector, right? So for an average teenager who's now going to be interested in this sector genuinely, what would you advise in terms of them being able to, as young adults, be inventors or be creators to come into the sector?
See, I think the most important thing is to keep building. That's the most important thing. I mean, I see a lot of people, and this is a thing which is very specific to India. They just think about it, but they don't do anything about it, right? So, of course, it's very difficult to, find a launch for your spacecraft. But it doesn't take so much money to build it, right? Build a prototype, okay? It doesn't matter that you have to buy space grade solar cells, buy solar cells off Amazon or wherever, right? But unless you've built a system where a solar panel is charging a battery and that battery is running some radios cost a couple of dollars now, right? So for probably $50, $60, you can actually build a complete space system together and, put it on your rooftop, fly it on a balloon or do whatever. But I think it's very important to have that hands-on experience. And unless you have that hands-on experience, all your, it's just an imaginary world that you're spinning up. So I think that's the important thing, to actually gain a lot of hands-on experience. I mean, for example, a lot of them talk about these Earth observation satellites, right? And they go on and on about the fact that, this resolution and that resolution and this telephoto, you have to fit a telephoto lens onto a Raspberry Pi camera and see what it can point at, right? Add a servo motor to it, or buy a surveillance camera, mount, which can, pan and tilt a camera and see where you can point. It's going to be an education worth $500,000 to know how crude that entire mechanism is, right? I mean, you think you'll be able to get something like 0.1 degree accuracy. You're not going to get that accuracy. I'm just talking about picking one thing out, right? So I think it's very important that all the young people acquire skills to be able to build stuff. Very important, okay? However primitive, however simple, and it's best that you build primitive stuff, okay? Build battery chargers, build solar battery chargers, build OBCs, build embedded systems, build radios, find out actually how much range it gives you. So, I mean, these are all the things that are parts and parcel of space tech. And you can acquire these very easily. And they ought to be acquired. Even if you are not going to be a techie here, even if you say, okay, I'm going to, face a customer, it's important for you to realize what it takes to build this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an exciting time, despite, we are, being possibly a little bit later.
See, this is the most exciting time to be a builder or a maker, as they are called these days, right? You can buy anything from any part of the world and it'll arrive on your desk within a week if Government of India, agrees, because that's another big hole. You can't get anything. I mean, you've stopped AliExpress from, us from buying from AliExpress. The entire maker market of India survived on AliExpress and they have nowhere to go. But that's another, I don't want to, start that discussion at the end of the podcast. But the fact is that we can get components from complete spacecrafts to nuts and bolts, right? For example, the spring which goes on the bottom of the CubeSat, it's available from McMaster's. It costs $2. You can buy that stuff. It will be on your desk. It will come in an envelope, right? For $10, you'll get it here. So I think it's important to play around with this, especially if you're an engineer, And that's the only way to learn the stuff. And once you learn the stuff, then you know how much it actually costs to build the stuff. So, building stuff, being able to get money out of this will come a couple of years down the line. You cannot think that you'll do a startup today and within 3 years or 4 years realize revenues. That's not going to happen.
Maybe final question. You've, built and launched 2 assets up into space. Where do you see yourself, using all of this experience so far and doing things further?
Yeah, personally speaking, I would like to get out of ExseedSpace as soon as I can. Okay, because originally the job that I had signed up for was to do technical diligence on companies that we would invest in. And we ended up by running a company on its own. But the company has a team in place. I hope that this team will be able to do the future. Actually the current, we have 2 missions, all ready for launch. It's just that ISRO is not flying much these days. So the 3rd mission was, I have not even touched it. I have not even, except to do review of the source code, I have had no part in that one at all. So I don't see myself doing much. What I would like to do very late in life is to learn more maths. Because really maths is at the basis of all this, right? And I've been, going around to debates and quizzes, etc., when I should have been, sitting in the class and, getting my maths sorted out. So that is actually one big gap I have in my own, knowledge. And I hope to be able to cover that up quickly. So that is my personal goal within space tech, to understand this technology from maths perspective, because that really is the key thing, right? How do you predict an orbit? I don't know. I think, I'll use gpredict to predict it, but I need to know how that equation works. I need to know, how you can get one of the 3 constellation satellites to go into a slightly elliptical orbit. What does it take to do that? What's the software? How does the PID work and ADCS? So at the end of the day, entire space science is maths. It's not very complicated maths, by the way. It's fairly simple maths. You're not using tensors here or whatever, or, any of those things, but it's simple maths. But you need to figure that out. So that's my personal goal here, to be out of ExseedSpace, satellites as it's called now, and to be able to look at more companies and be able to, invest in them and, mentor them.
So maybe just to close off, would love to, at least for the crowd in Hyderabad, for you to talk a little bit about the radio activities here and how possibly they can be involved.
Oh yeah, so we have a Lamakan Amateur Radio Club, which meets every second Sunday here at Lamakan at 3 p.m. Lamakan you can find on Google Maps, so drop in here. You'll see a lot of people who are building earth stations, people who are, thinking of building satellites, people who are doing radio work, and also people who are doing other stuff. Building their own 3D printers. They are builders, makers, they are software hackers, all sorts of people gather here. So it's an interesting crowd, young and old, all people mixed together. There are people who are just going to second-hand markets and picking up, vintage stuff. So that's actually a good place to begin with if you want to start building stuff. Even if you're trying to get woodwork going, or from there to building satellites. So I invite you all to come and join the Lamakan Amateur Radio Club, 3 p.m. every second Sunday at Lamakan.
Farhan, always fascinating to talk to you, and always so many things to kind of learn, and it's very inspiring always to kind of talk to you on all the whole array of things that you managed to do.
You guys have been a big inspiration for me. I should put it on record, right? ExseedSpace wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for you guys and the conversations I've had with you before we started this out.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of the NewSpace India podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share this episode with anyone you believe will enjoy listening to it. You'll be able to find the NewSpace India podcast in any of the podcasting platforms that you may be using, including Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Do subscribe to the podcast in case you want to receive new episodes automatically. I'm grateful if you're able to leave a rating for the podcast, which will help others discover it. Thank you for listening in again, and the next episode will be out in the next 2 weeks as usual.